The Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes squaring off for a monumental clash in the NFL on Sunday Football. But this game is interesting for a reason that we did not expect when the season started. Baltimore enters this coming off a disappointing 1-2 start, and so do the perennial power Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. This preview is different than what we expected, but full of juicy stuff. I'm Rob Love. This is One Flock. It's time to fly.
Let's go Ravens, let's go Ravens, let's go Ravens, let's go Ravens. We are one flock, we are one flock, we are one flock, we are one flock.
Welcome back to One Flock. It's good to have you here. All you first timers, all of you who loyal fans who've been here. It's our first year at One Flock. We recently reached over 1,000 subscribers and we're racing towards 2,000. So if you haven't already, please make sure today you find that like button, hit that subscribe button, and help us continue to grow this family, because that's what it is, family. But we got things to talk about today, so let's just dig right into it. Huge matchup, as we already talked about, with the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs. We know anytime these two teams are playing, the implications are large, because these are two of the most dominant programs over the past few years with the quarterbacks that they each have at the helm that we've seen. And they play in the same division, the AFC. They're going to see each other. Who won in the regular season is going to mean something as you get towards the end of the season. But this year, it's a bit different because there's question marks right now about whether either of these teams win their division, and beyond that, if they even make the playoffs, especially whoever loses this game in week 4. Interesting stat here. Any team in NFL history, as long as we've been tracking it, that has started the season with 1 win and 3 losses, they only make it to the playoffs 1 out of every 10 times. Yes, that's it. 90% of the time, those teams that start off 1 and 3 do not make the playoffs. Now, given those teams, I would assume, did not have Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. They didn't have an Andy Reid calling calls. But still, the numbers don't lie. This is a precarious position for whoever ends up being the loser of this matchup. In most cases, and again, I would say in all cases previously, when we've been previewing a matchup between these two teams, this iteration of these two teams with Lamar Jackson and Mahomes in that era, it was not about who was going to make the playoffs. It was not about implications as to whether they would make the playoffs. It was only about positioning. It was only about who might have home field advantage in a potential playoff matchup. But this is odd. This is new. And the question is that many people are asking, why? Well, let's start off looking at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs have had a number of injuries to start the season. Rashee Rice being unavailable, Xavier Worthy being unavailable, 2-star wide receivers, has made that offense not function as expected. And that makes sense. When you lose 2 players of that importance out of your offense, of that caliber, it's going to have an effect. Also, the Kansas City Chiefs, like the Baltimore Ravens, have had one of the more difficult starts to the season in far as who they've been playing. They've played already. Last year's Super Bowl champions. Jalen Hurts and those guys came to town, and of course, that would have been a hard game for anyone. They're the Super Bowl champs. Looking across the way, the Baltimore Ravens have had injuries of their own to deal with on the defensive side of the ball. Nnamdi Madubuike on IR, the number 1 interior rusher that they have. Kyle Van Noy, missing from injury, the number 1 edge rusher that they have. Injuries in their secondary. Jair Alexander, unable to play as he was expected to be a key part of this defense. There's been a number of things that have happened to this defensive unit that have made it look very different than they expected to be. Add to that, the Baltimore Ravens have also played one of the toughest schedules. They've already played the Buffalo Bills. They've already played the high-powered Detroit Lions, which we saw last week, and that team definitely looks for real. So both of these teams through the first 3 weeks, have had very difficult schedules, and they've had key players missing on opposite sides of the ball. Defense for the Ravens, offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. And not unexpectedly, those are the sides of the ball where both teams have struggled. The defense for the Kansas City Chiefs traditionally has been good for the last 2 years. In fact, I found this interesting. Did you know that the Kansas City Chiefs defense is the #1 scoring defense since the beginning of 2023? Just to put that in perspective, what that means the Kansas City Chiefs defense have allowed the least amount of points to their opponents of any defense in the NFL over the last 2 years. Meanwhile, the offense, which we have expected to be dominant in the Patrick Mahomes era, has suddenly begun to falter. Like we said, with the injuries that are there, they pulled in Hollywood Brown, a former Baltimore Raven, which brings a little bit more drama perhaps to this matchup. Hollywood Brown was drafted by the Ravens, good buddies with Lamar Jackson. For whatever reason, he decided he wanted to go elsewhere, and the Ravens granted him a trade. He now ends up with Patrick Mahomes. Could this be a opportunity for Hollywood Brown to try and give a little to the Ravens? Maybe. The knock on Hollywood Brown, if you ask most Ravens fans, was, sure, fast receiver, great straight line speed, but his hesitance to go across the middle. It seemed like every time Hollywood Brown thought there was going to be contact, what would Hollywood do? I'm going to go down. You know, he didn't run into the contact. He didn't want the smoke. He was getting away from it. And if you look at his numbers this year, he's only averaging 9 yards a reception. And with his speed, and if you watched in any of his games, it looks like those same tendencies are limiting him. Meanwhile, Tyquan Thornton, wow, this guy is looking like the real deal. This guy is averaging 19 yards per reception, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood. He also is flashing 4.2 speed. He's catching highly contested balls. He's giving Patrick Mahomes another option in the absence of Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And the connection is starting to really show. So this could be something that really puts pressure on the Ravens secondary. Ravens secondary, though, does have, while they've been struggling as a defense as a whole, they do have Nate Wiggins back there. Perhaps Nate Wiggins needs to be assigned with his speed and great performance thus far. If you've watched him in the secondary, he's really done a good job. It's going to be a challenge for him. It's going to be a challenge for whoever's given that assignment. But I think you might expect to see Nate Wiggins giving some attention to Tyquan Thornton. Now, whether Xavier Worthy is going to be back in this game hasn't been said for sure right now. I think he's still showing as questionable. He has returned to practice. If Xavier Worthy is able to play, that's just going to be even more pressure on this Baltimore secondary that has been challenged through the last 3 games in stopping powerful offenses. It really couldn't be a more perfect storm, the fact that the running game for the Kansas City Chiefs, which has struggled, they don't have any running back that's averaging more than 3.7 yards per carry. Pacheco, coming back from injury last year, can't manage to get up to 4 yards per carry. Behind him, I think 3.5 yards per carry. They can't get a good run game going, and it's really made it hard to open up their passing game. In fact, the leading rusher for the Kansas City Chiefs, oddly enough, is Patrick Mahomes. If they're going to threaten the Ravens in this game, they're going to have to try to capitalize on what the Ravens have been showing as a weakness, and that is the trenches. A lot of injuries in the trenches. Are they going to be able to do that against our defensive line? Well, that really is more of a question than a place I can put a stand on right now, or a stamp, because their strengths, their weaknesses mirror our strengths and weaknesses. Where we're weak, they're weak. Weak running game, weak running defense. Which one is going to step up? If the Ravens expect to win this game, they are going to have to be committed to not being the team that finally gives the Kansas City Chiefs rushing game a glimpse of their former prominence. They can't be the get right game for Isaiah Pacheco. If Isaiah Pacheco gets right against the Ravens defense, that's not a good sign going forward. Now, looking at the other side, that defense that the Kansas City Chiefs has, they're going to have to try to get after Lamar Jackson if that's what they're expecting to do, because Lamar Jackson has been nothing but what he ended the season as last year in his MVP form when he got robbed. Lamar Jackson is still playing like the MVP. He's the number one quarterback in the NFL. He absolutely is having the most yards per pass, the highest efficiency rating, QBR rating of over 140. He's got the most passing touchdowns. He is doing everything that you expect Lamar Jackson to do. And if the Kansas City Chiefs can't stop that, it's going to be a long day for them unless Patrick Mahomes is able to run around and buy time against a very ineffective Ravens pass rush. And that's really the question mark for the Ravens. Is the defense going to rise to the call? Because my gut feeling is, because of the dominance of the Ravens offense, let's not forget, this Ravens offense is the number one offense in the NFL right now. Don't let the record fool you. The Ravens offense is the number one scoring offense in the NFL. If this defense can slow down what has already shown itself to be a downgraded Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs offense, there's no reason why the Ravens shouldn't be able to run away with this game, particularly in the second half. However, as we've seen time and time again, if you can't stop the other team from scoring, it really doesn't matter that much that you have a very good offense, because anybody who plays against you is going to look like they too have a really great offense. And that's the real question about what we're going to see tomorrow. I wish I could tell you right now that I expect for the Baltimore Ravens to come out with a very different look defense and to suddenly be a threat to stop Kansas City, to stop the rush, to shut down Patrick Mahomes, to prevent him from being able to slice and dice. But I can't do that. Why? Because last week, Jared Goff, a statue who lacks the scrambling ability of Patrick Mahomes, who cannot buy himself time in the pocket, that guy, a statue in the pocket, was unharassed, unbothered by the Baltimore Ravens defense. He was able to sit back in the pocket and pick his receivers, which is where he is especially dangerous. Patrick Mahomes has every bit as great an arm at pinpoint passes as Jared Goff. But what Patrick Mahomes also has is the ability to scramble and buy himself time, something that the Ravens defense didn't have to worry about last week, and they still got cooked. If this Ravens defense does not step up big time, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a field day sitting back in that pocket, buying time, and putting pressure on their secondary, picking them apart. And if that happens, then you end up with a crapshoot for this game. Who's a coin flip? Because we can say with certainty, yes, Lamar Jackson and the offense, they're going to put up a lot of points. But you can't say that Patrick Mahomes, given time in the pocket with Tyquan Thornton, Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce out there, who's not Travis Kelce of years past, but is still Travis Kelce. You can't say they can't put up points too, because they can. And if you give them the opportunity in a desperation game, because that's what this is, it is a desperation matchup, Kansas City Chiefs are going to hang points. And this game becomes a, who's it going to be? And if it comes down to that, that's when coaching becomes a thing. And I don't think anyone's prepared to say that Andy Reid is not significantly better than John Harbaugh in pressure situations. If it comes down to a close game, good chance Ravens lose, which is why it can't be a close game. If this game ends up going down to the last minute, John Harbaugh will show himself to be what he's shown himself to be time and time again. And that is not even a shadow of Andy Reid under pressure. Andy Reid under pressure. How many times have you seen the Kansas City Chiefs in close games and the Kansas City Chiefs somehow pull it out? Have we seen that under John Harbaugh with these Ravens? No, we've seen the opposite. We've seen where things just get a little weird and the Ravens have a huge lead and somehow they just crumble and fall under the pressure of a comeback. If this game comes down to the wire, Ravens lose. Which is why it cannot come down to the wire. The Ravens' recipe for this victory has to be they're going to have to strike early, and they are going to have to maintain that lead, which means the defense is going to have to show up. Derrick Henry cannot be fumbling the ball. I don't know if you guys watched what Chris Jones said. We saw what Derrick Henry's been doing, dropping the ball. Everybody's seen it. Every defense in the country that sees Derrick Henry come, now they're not just thinking, ooh, this is going to hurt when they're going to tackle him. They're thinking, ooh, I can punch out the ball. They're all going to be trying to strip Derrick Henry. And if they're successful, just the mental implications for Derrick Henry going forward, his psyche, it could change everything. So this is important. Derrick Henry really has to break that spell. He has to start changing the conversation. It has to be about him being a big bruiser of a back now and not him fumbling the ball. He's really got to make that happen. If the Ravens can control and reestablish the rushing game, that will put the pressure on a struggling offense of the Kansas City Chiefs. But if they cannot establish that rushing game, keep Patrick Mahomes and those guys on the sidelines, something that they failed to do when they were facing off against the Detroit Lions last week. If they can't do that, this game could be a lot closer than the Ravens want it to be if they're hoping to mask the deficiencies of their defense. What better way to mask those deficiencies while you're trying to get healthy? And yes, the Ravens do bring back Travis Jones this week, which is a big addition, but how healthy is he going to be? Is he going to be in condition to really play a emotional, passionate, high-energy game and give quality minutes for most of it? Or will he get winded early in his first game back? Hard to tell. Ravens have elevated players off the practice squad. How will that unit gel? A lot of questions on the defense. So the best thing to do is let those guys stay off the field as much as possible, which means the offense is going to have to be able to establish the run. Lamar has shown us he can quick strike. He can throw some bombs, and the Ravens can score quickly. Blitzkrieg. 2-minute drives, done. Those don't really help the Ravens if they're putting a winded defense, an undermanned defense back on the field. That defense needs to sit and rest because we don't have a lot of bodies to rotate, particularly on the defensive line. Maybe the running game being reestablished will help. But will that happen? Time will tell. We only are hours away from watching this monumental matchup. One other thing that really should help the Ravens in this matchup get a little bit more spunk than they've had in an already electric offense is the reemergence of what the Ravens are hoping is Mark Andrews' return to form. In the last game, even though it was a loss against the Detroit Lions, it was encouraging to see Mark Andrews out there catching passes, not just dropping them, catching passes and getting touchdowns. That's the player that Mark Andrews has to return to being, especially in the absence of Isaiah Likely, who also may be making his reappearance in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Isaiah Likely returned to full practice this week and is still listed as questionable, but there's a lot of optimism coming from the Ravens camp. Whispers of that we may see Isaiah Likely suiting back up in this game against the Chiefs. If that happens, that gives Lamar Jackson one of his most potent threats going down the field in Isaiah Likely. And with Mark Andrews returning to form and that guy Likely back, woo, that definitely would help an offense that's going to have to pile up points and pile them up in a hurry to keep this game from being a close game, because a close game against these Kansas City Chiefs, these desperation-bound Kansas City Chiefs, is not what the Ravens need in this game if they want to get out of Kansas City. Arrowhead with the win. Interesting thing, Lamar Jackson being sacked, you know Chris Jones and those boys are going to be coming for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has been sacked 5 times in the red zone this year already through 3 games. That leads the NFL. 5 times in the red zone. The Ravens hopefully have come up with some sort of quick release passes. Got to have a hot guy. Zay Flowers needs to be utilized more. We know how quick Zay Flowers is. The play calling is going to have to adapt to the fact that we don't hold the pocket well with our present offensive line. And if Ronnie Stanley, who is listed as questionable, is not able to suit up for this game, that becomes even more important. Again, this is all coaching at this stage. If you understand where you're weak, if you understand where you're limited, if you understand where you're undermanned, you have to try to counter it through the way you design your play calling. Todd Monken and John Harbaugh and Zach Orr have a very, very, very important part to play in this game, especially because they are going up against Spags and Andy Reid, who no one questions what these two dudes can do when the pressure is on. It's time for the Ravens coaches to rise to the occasion, because at the end of the day, everybody has injuries, everybody has missing players, everybody has challenges. That's what coaches are for, to figure out how to mitigate their challenges and maximize their advantages. It's a chess game, and that's what we're going to see. Mad respect for Andy Reid and Spags and the Kansas City Chiefs and what they've done over there. The Baltimore Ravens have all the reasons to win this game. I picked them to win this game. I picked them to win this game before the season even started. But if it's going to happen today, it requires one thing, and that one thing is the Ravens must execute on a level for an entire game that we have not seen happen thus far this season. The Kansas City Chiefs will come to play. I believe they will treat this game as a playoff game, and you will see Andy Reid in his bag. John Harbaugh, Zach Orr, Todd Monken, you better be in yours, or this game will be the third loss for the Baltimore Ravens. If the coaches come out with a good plan and the players execute, which is important as well, Henry, you got to stop fumbling the ball away. Defense, you got to actually tackle. You got to stop acting like you're going to tackle and missing 20 missed tackles in the last game. The Ravens execute and the coaches come with a good game plan. Ravens should win this game. Why? They have the number one offense. I always look at who have you beat and who have you lost to. Both of these teams can say they haven't really beat anybody, but the teams they've lost to have been quality teams. The Ravens, I mean, look at who they lost to. Detroit Lions, Super Bowl contender. Buffalo Bills, Super Bowl contender. The Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Super Bowl champion. So again, it's early in the season. No time. I don't think either one of these teams are in jeopardy for real at this stage of not making the playoffs. But it is not to be overlooked. The starting off 1-3 certainly can make it psychologically tough. Every game becomes super high pressure from that point on for whoever loses this game, and thus it's very important. So I'll be watching, you'll be watching. I'm curious, what are your comments? What do you think is going to happen with this game? Who do you think is going to rise to the occasion? Will Lamar Jackson, who has only beat Patrick Mahomes one time in his short career, Lamar Jackson is 1-6, I believe, is what he is against Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he's 1-5. Whatever the case, he's only beat him one time. Lamar Jackson loses to him again, especially with a struggling Kansas City Chiefs offense. How will that weigh on his psyche the next time he has to play the Chiefs? Hard to tell, hard to say. But I know as Ravens, we're hoping that we don't have to worry about that. We hope we get victory 2 this time around. But it's going to be a great game. It's going to be high octane. There's plenty on the line. What are you thinking is going to happen? What do the Ravens need to do to win this game? Kansas City Chiefs fans, what are you guys thinking? Do you think you're going to win? Are you feeling optimistic coming into this game with your home field advantage? I want to hear about it in the comments. Let's keep the conversation respectful because I know this is a real rivalry. But let's find out. Let's get some real conversation going. We got some stuff to talk about. But that's all we got right now is now wait and see. Let's see what happens with this game. I'm saying Ravens, let's fly. I'm keeping the optimism up. I'm hoping, but I still got my fingers crossed, my shoestrings. I got all that happening. But I'm going to enjoy this game. You guys enjoy it as well. For those of you who just got here, thanks for coming. For those of you who came back, come on back after the game's over because we're going to have to talk about what happened. For now, that's all for this episode of One Flock. I'm Rob Love. Remember, if there's one thing this world will never be too full of, that thing is love. Find somebody that needs a little bit more love in their life and give it to them, right? For One Flock, I'm out of here. You know my last words. Thanks for flying with the brother. We'll see you back next time. Let's go.
We take the field as one flock. Come on, Ravens, here we go as one flock. We keep grinding till we soar to the top. Come on, Ravens, here we go as one flock. We keep grinding till we soar to the top. Let's go Ravens, let's go Ravens, let's go Ravens, let's go Ravens. We are one flock.
out of me. Believe that.